I was wearing a champagne-colored dress, chosen weeks earlier with excitement. My hair was done, my makeup flawless, and my smile, rehearsed. It was my sister's wedding day, a day for joy, family, and love. But all I could feel was the weight of something off. Something I didn't want to name yet. My husband stood beside me, but emotionally he was nowhere near. His eyes barely met mine, and his phone kept lighting up with notifications he would glance at, then hide. I asked him quietly, "Are you okay?" He replied without looking. "Can you just not do this right now?" That was the first cut. At the reception, I tried to focus on my sister. She looked radiant. Everyone was smiling, toasting, laughing. And I was performing. Pretending my stomach wasn't twisting with every glance he gave to his phone. Then came the moment. We had just sat down to eat when I felt my phone vibrate. It was a message from a number I didn't know. No words, just a screenshot. I opened it. My hands went cold. The screen showed a message exchange between my husband and another woman. Her name was saved as Claire Jim. But what they were saying had nothing to do with fitness. "I miss your hands. Can't wait to be alone with you again. This wedding is making me think about us even more." I froze. My heart beat so loud I couldn't hear the music anymore. I stood up, walked slowly to where he was talking to my cousin, and without hesitation, I held the phone in front of his face. "Want to explain this before or after I read it to the table?" He stared at the screen. Then at me. He opened his mouth, and closed it again. I turned to the table and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "My husband has been texting another woman." While standing next to me at my sister's wedding. People went quiet. My aunt dropped her fork. My dad looked stunned. My sister, still in her white dress, started walking toward us, confused. "And he?" He said nothing. He just stood there, caught. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just turned, walked toward the exit, and left the room full of gasps, murmurs, and one man stuck in place, still holding his phone. I walked out into the parking lot. The wind was cool on my face. I sat on a bench, and for the first time in months, I let the silence wash over me. I wasn't sure if it was heartbreak or clarity I felt. Maybe both. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at a friend's place. I ignored his calls. And I opened a blank document on my laptop. Typed the first sentence. He humiliated me in public, but I refused to disappear quietly. This wasn't just a story about cheating. It was a story about choosing myself, finally, loudly, unapologetically. Don't miss what happens next. Like, share, and subscribe if you've ever had to walk away from someone who betrayed you. This story has only just begun. The next morning, I woke up on my friend's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like vanilla and safety. For a few moments, I forgot. Then I saw my phone blinking on the coffee table and remembered everything. The screenshots. His face. The silence in that room. 12 missed calls. 3 voicemails. All from him. I didn't press play. I wasn't ready to hear his voice. I wasn't sure I ever would be. Instead, I opened my messages. One from my sister stood out. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I'm here if you need anything." I stared at it for a while before responding. "It wasn't your fault. Just, thank you." My friend handed me coffee and sat beside me. "Do you want to talk about it?" I shook my head. Not yet. My thoughts were too loud to be spoken aloud. Later that day, I finally opened one of the voicemails. His voice was shaky, unrecognizable. "I don't know what to say. I made a mistake. Please don't let this ruin us." Us? That word felt foreign. There wasn't an us anymore. There was only the version of me who had endured too many excuses and too much pretending. I called my mom. She already knew. Word travels fast in families, especially after a scene at a wedding. I'm not mad at you, she said softly. I just want to know what you need. Space, I whispered. I need to figure this out on my own. She respected that. In the days that followed, I kept going through the motions. Wake up. Shower. Eat something. Try to sleep. Repeat. But I wasn't numb. I was processing. A friend from college messaged me after seeing the post I'd shared, the one sentence I had written that night. He humiliated me in public, but I refused to disappear quietly. She wrote, "You don't know how many women need to hear that right now." It hit me. My pain wasn't unique, but maybe my reaction could give someone else permission. Permission to speak up. To walk out. To choose themselves. That's when I started journaling again, not for social media, not for anyone else. Just me. Every emotion. Every flashback. Every angry thought I had bitten back in the past year. I wrote about the time he rolled his eyes when I cried during a movie. The way he brushed off my achievements like they were hobbies. The way I kept quiet because I didn't want to start something. There were so many little betrayals before the big one. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was his sister. I just wanted to say. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I knew something was wrong between you two. I should have said something sooner. You didn't owe me that, I replied. No, she said, but I admire you for what you did. Not many people would have had the strength. That word again. Strength. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. But I also felt honest, and maybe that was the beginning of strength. That night, I packed a small bag and booked a weekend trip out of town. Somewhere quiet, near the water. I needed to be away from places that held our memories. I needed to remember what it felt like to be with myself, for myself. As I zipped up the bag, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My face looked tired, but my eyes were steady. And for the first time since the wedding, I exhaled without shaking. The seaside town I escaped to wasn't special. A couple of streets, a quiet beach, and the kind of silence that doesn't expect anything from you. That's exactly why I went. I checked into a small inn run by a woman named Teresa. She didn't ask questions, just handed me the key and said, "If you need anything, the coffee's always fresh in the kitchen." For 2 days, I walked barefoot on the sand and wrote in my journal. Not just about the betrayal, but about everything that led to it, how I stopped asking for what I needed, how I started calling neglect patience, how I learned to flinch silently instead of speaking up. It wasn't just about him. It was about all the ways I disappeared trying to keep the peace. The third morning, I received a message that felt different. It was from his best friend, someone who had always been cordial but never truly close. I heard what happened, it read. And I want you to know I saw signs. I didn't speak up. I should have. I didn't know how to respond. So I didn't. But later that day, another message came. This time from his cousin, someone I used to confide in during family gatherings. You never deserved to be a backup plan, she wrote. He always knew you'd stay, so he stopped earning you. That sentence stuck to my ribs. He stopped earning you. It was true. And I had let it slide for far too long. When I returned home, I found a letter waiting for me. Not from him, from my old college roommate. We hadn't spoken in over a year. I read your post. I don't know what you're going through, but I remember how bright you were. Please don't let this make you forget that. That night, I laid all the letters, messages, and printouts from my journal across my bedroom floor. Pages and pages of truth, regret, realization. It looked like evidence. Of what I had endured. Of who I was becoming. I began turning those notes into something more structured. An idea started forming, not quite a book, but maybe a collection. Reflections. Warnings. Survival. It didn't matter if anyone read it. I needed to write it. I also decided to meet with someone, a therapist. Not to fix anything, but to witness myself out loud. To stop minimizing the impact of what had happened. She listened as I told her about the wedding. About the text. About the silence. And then she asked, "Was that the first time he embarrassed you publicly?" "No," I said, surprised by how quickly the answer came. She nodded, gently. "Sometimes the final straw is just the first one we allow ourselves to acknowledge." That line echoed through me for days. I started responding to the women who had messaged me online. Dozens of them had written with stories that sounded like mine. Some were still in it, too afraid to leave. Others had left years ago but hadn't told anyone why. One woman wrote, "You saying it out loud gave me permission to finally say it to myself. I didn't expect to become a mirror for anyone. But if my truth could reflect back the strength someone else had forgotten, then it was worth every uncomfortable word I'd shared." I didn't know yet where this journey was taking me, but I was beginning to feel it was mine. Not a reaction to betrayal, a reclamation after it. There was a moment, maybe small to anyone else, that told me I was healing. I was at a bookstore, flipping through a photography book, and I laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real, full one. The kind that sneaks up on you. The woman next to me smiled like she understood. And in that moment, I realized, I hadn't laughed like that in months. I bought the book. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to own that feeling. At home, I cleared a corner of my apartment and turned it into something new, a space just for creating. A small table, my old camera, a notebook, and a stack of books I once loved. I started snapping photos again, small things. Light through the blinds. Coffee steam. Shadows on the floor. It felt like a language I used to speak and was finally remembering. My phone buzzed, but I didn't reach for it. I had turned off all notifications from him weeks ago. The silence was peaceful. That week, I received an invitation from a local women's group. One of the members had seen my post, and she asked if I'd be willing to join their next gathering. It was a safe space for women who had experienced emotional betrayal, control, or isolation. I said yes, though I wasn't sure I belonged. But when I walked into that room, and saw faces that looked like mine, tired, brave, unsure, I felt something click. I didn't speak at first. I just listened. Stories of marriages that dissolved, of years lost in silence, of redefinitions. Some cried. Some laughed. One woman said, "I stayed so long I forgot how to close a door behind me." When it was my turn, I didn't share everything. Just the part that still lived in my throat. "He read my vows like they were lines in a script," I said. But when I read his messages, that's when I heard the truth. There were nods. No pity. Just recognition. Afterward, someone approached me, a teacher in her 50s who had left her marriage 2 years earlier. She said, "I wish I had said something out loud when I still had the energy." You did it. And that matters. I walked home feeling full, not of answers, but of understanding. That night, I looked through old photos of myself from before I was married. There was one I hadn't seen in years, me on a rooftop, laughing, holding a paintbrush, barefoot and wild. I stared at her for a long time. She wasn't gone. She had just been quiet. I pinned that photo above my desk. The more I worked on my writing and photography, the more I heard from people. They wanted to know more. How I had walked away. What helped. What hurt. I didn't have a roadmap, but I had pieces. So I began sharing them, one post at a time. Small truths. Gentle reminders. People started following. Not in large numbers, but enough to know the message was reaching hearts. He, of course, saw them too. I knew because he sent a message. "I read what you wrote. I guess you needed to say it your way." No apology. Just a trace of control disguised as acceptance. I didn't respond. Instead, I posted a photo of my hands holding a pen, captioned, This is how I rebuild. I wasn't trying to teach anyone. I was just trying not to disappear. And in that process, I found a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. She wasn't polished or fearless. But she was honest. And she was mine. The day the divorce papers arrived, I didn't cry. I expected to, but I didn't. I opened the envelope, read the contents carefully, and laid the documents flat on my kitchen table. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache, just rests. I signed my name slowly, without hesitation. My hand didn't shake. There was no dramatic soundtrack playing, no wave of emotions crashing in. It felt clean. That's the word. Like closing a book that needed to end. A week later, I took a walk by myself through the city. No destination. Just streets I hadn't walked in years. I passed the cafe where he used to meet me after work, the bookstore we pretended to browse in together, the apartment where we once started. None of it hurt the way I thought it would. There were no ghosts, only memories. And I had outgrown them. A message came through that evening. From him. Simple, short. I got the papers. I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but out of finality. Some things don't need a reply. Some doors don't need to be slammed, they just need to be shut, gently, and locked. The writing project I had started began to take shape. Not a book, not yet. But enough for a collection. I shared parts of it with the women's group. One of them, a graphic designer, offered to help me put it together as a small ebook. I didn't do it for exposure. I did it because the words were mine, and I was ready to give them space. People kept messaging me, strangers, friends, distant acquaintances. Not just to share their pain, but to tell me they felt seen. That they didn't feel ashamed anymore. That's when I realized, maybe I had spent so long trying not to be a burden, I forgot how powerful it is to simply be honest. On a quiet afternoon, I printed one of my favorite photos, a silhouette of a woman walking into the sunlight, the caption underneath reading. She never needed saving. Just room to return to herself. I framed it. Hung it in my hallway. I no longer flinch when I hear his name. I no longer rehearse the story in my head, wondering if I could have done something different. I did what I could, until I couldn't. And when that moment came, I left. Not to punish him. Not to prove anything. Just to come back to myself. People assume closure is a single moment. It's not. It's a quiet string of days where you wake up and realize, you no longer wait for a text, you no longer need an apology, you no longer check who's watching your story. Closure is deciding to live well, even without the sorry. I still take photos. Still write. Still walk alone sometimes, and not because I'm lonely, but because I enjoy my own company now. I light candles for no reason. I cook dinners just for me. I laugh at things no one else sees. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm not building a new version of myself. I'm just becoming the version I paused, years ago, for someone who never knew what to do with it. This isn't a love story. It's a story about walking out of the room, quietly, with your head up, and realizing the silence that follows isn't empty. It's yours.